Um, I see we have the full committee. Um, let's see. Just to reiterate, we have one guest, David Eisenberg from the Falmouth Committee. We also have Bourne TV here. And is anybody else recording? Okay, seeing none, just presume that Bourne TV is going forward. One bit of caution for everybody. If we happen to extend our conversations into the area where we're talking about anything that the Falmouth MLP is discussing confidentially, David, if you would tell us to avoid that subject. At one of the meetings with Gigi Son, the name of that company was blurted out, and I saw a few grimaces, and I don't think that we want to get in the same position here by revealing confidential information.
I'll just point out, Bob, that it was published in the Falmouth Enterprise.
Oh, okay. Okay.
There's a blurring of information. First of all, I am not on the Falmouth Municipal Light Board, and I'm not on the Falmouth Net Board. I'm on the Falmouth Net Advisory Board, which gives me a non-governance role. I consider myself to be pretty independent of those guys. And so that means that everything I know is known by the public.
Okay.
And a lot of it has been presented in meetings that are covered by open meeting law. And even though people have requested that stuff remain confidential, and I'll try to honor those requests, there's been a lot of stuff published. There's been a lot of stuff blurted out by people who shouldn't. So I'll try and walk a reasonable line somewhere in the middle.
Okay, thank you very much. I just don't want our committee, SciTac, to be the ones who transgress the line to some position where we get us and any of the Falmouth activities in some kind of trouble with whoever the applicant is.
Sure.
Okay. With that, again, welcoming David Eisenberg as a guest, and I think we're ready to move forward. The first,
my keyboard.
I'm sorry,
Sorry.
Wendy.
My cat was just treading on my keyboard if you heard funny noises.
Okay, the joys of playing Hollywood Squares from home here.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. The first thing I'd like to do is go through and let's, since I have to switch computers here, I don't have my agenda up right in front of me, but the first item is a review of any minutes that we have available. It's been
which I sent out regrettably late, but they are here. I can screen share them if anybody wants to look at them without opening their email.
Yes, I would like to. I think we ought to go through those right now just to make sure we're caught up.
Okay.
Well, I haven't. Are you talking February 8th?
Yes.
Okay. Well, have they been sent out? Because I never saw them.
They just went out like half an hour ago. So look again. They're there.
I guess so. I'd like time to look at them. So if we're going to entertain a motion to approve those, I'm going to abstain.
They're very short, but sure.
In that case, I'd like everybody to participate. So I'm gonna table review of the minutes until the next meeting, wherever that may be.
Oh, okay. We can do that. I will unshare, I hope.
Okay. Very good.
I hate it when this happens.
Give me 1 second.
There we go. Are we unshared?
We are unshared.
Okay, good deal.
One moment here. I just had my minutes up on the other computer, which clearly was having its problems trying to connect. Let me just pull the agenda up here. One moment. Okay. Anne Marie, do we have any public correspondence that's come in over the last couple of weeks?
We have not.
Okay, we can move on from that agenda item. The next item is going over old and ongoing business. And the first item I want to go over is the presentation to the select board. A few of you were online. David didn't have the opportunity to see it. I should have sent you the slide deck, but first of all,
I would appreciate seeing it at some point. That would be wonderful.
We'll send it afterwards. I will send it out afterwards.
Thanks.
I've had a couple of discussions with MJ Mastrangelo, who's chair of our select board, David, who said, number one, we do not need to submit a written quarterly report, at least for this. The slide presentation, especially the extra slides, were quite extensive enough. So Wendy, you can kind of put that report to bed. No further activity is needed. We can keep that in our files for documentation, but I don't think we need to consider that in the meeting and submit it to the select board.
Okay.
Anne Marie, do you agree with that? She nodded her
Yes,
head.
it already became public record when it was sent to the select board at our meeting. So there's no
Right.
need to have to review or make it an attachment with any minutes.
Okay, very good. And first of all, for anybody who listened in online, the one thing that was kind of obvious is that we got virtually no comments on it, other than that the select board is taking it under advisement. Any particular points, etc., for those who listened in? I will say that both conversations with MJ before and after, she indicated that there is very little capacity in town government staff to help us here right now. Everybody is stretched to the limit, and that until we get some decision points back, and the two decision points I pointed out were the imminent arrival of the interim report from the digital equity study being conducted by the Cape Cod Commission, and secondly, some decision from MBI on who they will select or not select to get all or part of the $20 million grants to remedy some of the digital equity and other service deficits that are around the towns across the state. And then if in fact one of the incumbents that we sent qualified support letters for, then they will then decide whether or not they submitted that support letter from Bourne, and they will in fact offer to serve Bourne or to remedy these. So basically the comment from MJ was come back when we have a substantive proposal based on those activities. Go ahead, Jed.
Oh, Bob, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. You had asked for feedback on the meeting. My perspective is that there's a lot going on in town. This isn't the only select board meeting I ever attended. There's quite a bit. I mean, it's not like we're the only thing going on. There's a lot of high priorities in town, and so we just have to recognize that, right? That that we're not necessarily going to be most important thing right now.
Oh, absolutely.
And in terms of let's say, burdening the town hall staff, I, for one, would be willing to volunteer to, perform any administrative tasks that we're delivering to the town. I mean, if it's like logging into, say, in the case of the SEC NPRM comments, if they need someone to just log into the FCC site and load up the comments, I'm willing to do stuff like that.
Well, I made that offer, and they said that might be appropriate in some areas, but anything that involves any kind of a contract with the town has to be administered by a town employee.
Sure, right.
Well, administration is one thing, but submitting information is not.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Yeah,
not
so it
administration.
depends.
That's part of our charge.
Right. Again, just one point, MJ pointed out that, for instance, just trying to log on and submit the comments to FCC for various reasons took on and off 5 hours of staff time to do.
Right.
And I pointed out that, and I made clear in my my letter, if there are any concerns in staff, here's my phone number and my cell number. Call me right away, and I'll come right down and sit beside them to try to get the information submitted.
Yep.
And again, they didn't need that advice apparently, and they just kind of got hung up. So it that whole process took a while. I don't know what
Well,
to
I
say.
think right, when we request something from town hall, the town administrator likes to have her head wrapped around exactly what they're signing up for.
Mhm.
So that took a lot longer than anticipated as it was.
Yeah.
So, next time we'll
Ask
be
for
able
help.
to do more work up front before town hall has to hit the play button, right?
Well, again, apparently what happened is we submitted, John had gotten some background information on the rulemakings, et cetera. And if you haven't figured out already, Marlene is extremely thorough. So she read every word of it, apparently. Okay. And just to make sure that there were no hidden obligations that we got ourselves into by submitting those comments. And apparently they were submitted. So
Comments are comments. They're not any kind of contract or administrative burden. They're
Well,
comments.
hopefully now that she's reviewed the standard legalese for FCC comments, the future ones will go more swiftly because these requirements don't change very often.
mhm.
So maybe it's going forward, we can limit the need for town staff on some of these things if
Of course.
or simplify these things now that they've been done once already.
Yeah.
One would hope.
Provide a very simple, half-page roadmap of where pieces of these they are complex documents, but where they sit, and exactly what our comments would go ahead and do. In any case, so right now with regard to kind of the roadmap we laid out, I made it clear that these were all moving parts, and there are a number of decisions that are going to be made by other parties, or milestones that are going to be hit by other parties, and until those get hit, we should wait and then come back with recommendations on how to go forward as opportunities present themselves, or maybe as opportunities disappear, and like if the companies decide that they're not going to serve Bourne at all. So we would go forward from there. Does that seem like a reasonable path forward?
I certainly hope so.
I don't know
Well,
what else we can do. We're
Based
not
on the
gonna-
last time Comcast spoke, Bourne wasn't even part of the same sentence when they're talking about the towns they were considering. So
Hmm.
Comcast is probably not considering based on their own comments.
Well, we'll see if they get a grant. Okay. Verizon again with the influx or the entry into the south side of the canal at Monument Beach and Gray Gables. Presumably they're doing that as a test foray into a new market to see whether they can oust an incumbent. So we'll see where that goes. Okay. Again, the next item I have is a discussion, and David, we'd like your input too on meetings with Gigi Solon. I think there were a total of 5 meetings in various places where people participated. I think she started, this was a Monday through Wednesday activity last week, and she started at the Falmouth Select Board where we weren't present. There was another meeting the next night with, I guess it's the Falmouth Broadband Forum. Is that the official name of it now?
that was the name of the event.
Okay.
It was sponsored by Falmouth Net.
Mhm. There was a Cape Cod Technology Council not presentation, but online meeting on I guess the day of the snow. And that afternoon there was another online meeting that was sponsored by Open Cape. And the next day in Dartmouth there was a face-to-face meeting that was held with the Mass Broadband Coalition, and it had about I don't know, Brian, about a dozen municipalities present, something on that order. Okay. In any case,
Yeah, there was at least a dozen in person, and then we'll have to review the recording to see how many were online, but there were several more online.
right, right. I'm going to defer to anybody else who went to the other ones just to give your impressions on. Just for everybody knows, Gigi Son is she was a nominee for the federal communications commissioner, and there was some pushback from the companies in their call them representatives for lack of a better term,
Lobbyists.
and so those folks she had to withdraw her nomination, and now she is she's on the board of the American Association for Public Broadband. David, is that the correct name? Something close to that?
That's the correct name, and she's the executive director.
Oh, okay. So clearly she is an advocate for public broadband, and with some of the recordings I think that are available of her presentations, you get a very good nationwide perspective on the number of different municipalities who have been not served by the big companies, and basically went forward and set up their own equivalents of MLPs. Some of them are, at least where I used to work in Maryland, they're called co-ops. Some were set up as electrical co-ops among adjacent municipalities and then got into broadband. Some just jumped right into broadband to begin with. In Vermont, there are 10 they're communications union districts, I think is the name for them. And they cover geographically, at least from a map, they cover about 90% of the geography of the state of Vermont. And of course we have the MLP structure allowed under Massachusetts, I guess, legislation law. And she pointed out that there were, those were generally resounding success stories. Some of the older attempts by MLPs to do broadband because of poor organization, marketing, etc., failed. One being Braintree. That one is you see that in the mass priorities literature all the time. They talk about Braintree is the model for how these things are doomed to failure. Which
hey Bob, just a quick comment. Quick comment on that. What people don't understand is that Braintree was a cable TV system that failed, right? It wasn't primarily internet. I think they might have offered internet, but they basically built their own HFC network back in the 80s. And the reason it failed is that when you had to start rolling out fiber nodes and upgrading a lot of the back office, that they decided that they didn't want to do that, and they sold it all to Comcast. So that's the difference. They were a cable TV system, not an internet provider.
Okay, good.
I went to the Falmouth one, which was held virtually because of the weather. And there were two things that really struck me about Gigi's presentation that applies to what we're trying to do here. The first, with respect to the failure of community things, she noted that the citations for those are all decades old, at least 10 to 15 years old. And if you look at current MLPs or equivalents around the country, there are 650 of them or more, and more coming online all the time, she says, and they're succeeding just fine and dandy. Thank you very much. And the ISPs of this world want to try to make everybody believe that that's a failure model, and no municipality should ever consider anything like that because it's just going to be a money sink and it's going to fail. And see these ones that have failed, but the ones that have failed, like the one Jed was just mentioning, was never set up the way they're set up now anyway. So that's one talking point that I think we need to make clear to the folks that are listening to these industry sponsored objections. The second point, which I thought was really significant, was that you got to stop talking about wires and start talking about services and community needs. When you point out to a legislative body or of some kind of decision-making group that, we know all this stuff about poles and wires and fiber and cable and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, we do. And certainly that's all something that we need to know about. But what they need to focus on, and we need to help keep their focus on, is what benefits these have to the town. For example, for your home values go up. You can attract more scientific research sort of thing, which is sort of like a clean industry and very information intensive. And if you don't have a good system for that, those people are going to look around and say, oh, we're going to go and build somewhere else. Businesses, obviously, we've talked about that a long time. When you're working on an ancient contract that could not look forward because of the limitations of technology at the time, then that's not going to be helpful for the future. Also looking at tourism, obviously, tourists want better broadband, and we all know how dependent we are on tourism around here. Also home building. People aren't going to want to come here and live. You're not going to be able to attract young families who have maybe 2 wage earners who will pay taxes if you can't demonstrate that they're going to have the broadband service that they need and expect and are going to get elsewhere. So Gigi was making this point very, very strongly, and I think that's an important point for us to use as a framework for our advocacy and our planning, as well as looking at the nuts and bolts of the wires and the cables and the fiber and the poles. Is that, Dave, am I summarizing that adequately? Because you were there.
Awesome. Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. I take notes.
The one hurdle we're going to have is that we're going to have to try to demonstrate the urgency of any opportunities that are coming up, especially since programs like BEAD, this $100,000 grant, et cetera, are one-time only shots at the dips into the well.
There's actually more too. There's a second round of GAP, and there's the municipal funding grant, and the municipal funding grant could be dovetailed into a BEAD application if we're careful and multiply the amount of money, because it could become BEAD co-funding since it's a state grant and not a federal grant. And so we got a lot of money coming that we need to sort out.
Yeah, she said we are already 5 years behind, and the longer we don't do something, or not just us, but anybody doesn't do something, the further behind they're going to get, because other communities are going to eat our lunch.
Yeah, one other point is that we really need, once we identify these needs well, and I'm hoping the digital equity survey is going to point out a whole many classes of, call them stakeholders, who have inadequate service for various reasons, both because of connectivity and potentially because of lack of hardware, laptops, and lack of knowledge on how to use them. When we identify that and start to approach those groups, that will generate more of a lot more in terms of public support. One item that's very quickly, I think, just based on the last week generating support, is the fact that I don't know about anybody else, but my Comcast bill just jumped $30.
Yes.
Okay, and I've
Every
been stopped,
year. Yeah, you
and
can
I
expect that every year.
and
Oh,
I so it went up over 10%. At the same time, again, the inflation rate is much lower than that,
Mhm.
and I think it was Senator Markey's aide. I had a short discussion with him at the end of the meeting in Fairhaven. He said, he said that's because they can. And then I
Yeah.
heard a presentation by Larry Summers, the former Secretary of the Treasury. He said 40% of the inflation that we're experiencing is just due to
Profit taking.
especially for monopolistic entities like Comcast and others, is just, well, we're raising it because we can, not because we need the revenue. We're reporting record profits to our shareholders, and we'd like that to continue. And so we'll just blame it on Biden and call it a 10% increase, and just say that's due to mismanagement by the federal government. And so that's the strategy there.
Mhm.
That
And
was on
that's
CNBC.
going to be an uphill battle for education, but there's no reason that we cannot keep after that point.
Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, so going forward, again, talking about services and talking about the needs and benefits to citizens and getting citizen support is going to be key for anything we go forward with here. It's not going to be the 6 or 7 of us who are going to be the advocates. Okay, well, I'm going to put that to bed. Anything else on Gigi Sohn's participation? I'm sure she'd love our town, Falmouth, etc., to join her organization. It's a dues-paying organization, but at this point, I don't think it's that's something that's needed for Bourne right now. With that, I'm going to just turn this over to David Eisenberg, who was one of the I call him the instigators of FalmouthNet originally, and has is serving as kind of a senior advisor to the activities in Falmouth as they proceed with the Falmouth MLP. And I'd like to just kind of get his perspective on where he thinks Falmouth is, where it's going, and where he thinks there might be possibilities. One I'm keeping an eye out for is possibilities of joint activities with the MLP as they go forward, so we could get service into Bourne, perhaps under the wing of the Falmouth MLP.
Mm.
Go ahead, David.
I'm not quite sure where to start.
You can start in the middle and work outwards. That's fine.
Okay. The middle is about 5 years ago. We decided, we being a group of Falmouth citizens, grew up here. We were disgusted by Comcast and wanted and were aware that other communities had acted to get fiber optic networks. My previous career at Bell Labs and then I had stints here and there, the FCC, Harvard, etc. But at AT&T, I developed an expertise in broadband services and fiber optics, and I realized that things were getting simpler and cheaper, and that community networks were almost do-it-yourself at this point. I mean, with Ethernet provided plug and play, fiber provided infinite connectivity, infinite bandwidth. And so I've been a long time proponent of JFDI, which stands for Just Do It. The F is silent. So 5 years ago, I joined forces with Courtney Bird and Art Gaylord and several other interested people, and we pushed forward. The first thing that I did was raise a public education fund. I went to private donors and raised $50,000. And my assumption was that we would use this money to create the idea that the network was our network, much like the Red Sox are our team. Now, the Red Sox aren't really our team. They're a bunch of players from all over the world who happen to play in Boston and so on. But and around here, Red Sox fans, when the Red Sox win, they wake up a little happier the next morning. When they lose, they wake up a little grumpier. And in general, they follow the team and identify with it. And I thought that that would be a great goal for our network. Community support is really what it's all about. And if we had 100 people who every week were interacting with their town meeting members and the select board going, why don't we have it? When are we going to get it? I suffered because I didn't have it. I really need it. What are you doing about it? And, a cadre of people supported by a whole town where they think, hey, this is our network. That's really, to me, that was the starting point. I didn't really know how to do that, but I figured that if we had some money, we could hire a marketing consultant and get that underway, that project underway. It hasn't really happened like that. What did happen was the money that I raised got used in a very specific focused campaign to convince the town meeting members to establish a municipal light board, which I think is important, but it's form, not function. The function comes from the whole community, or a significant part of the community going, we have to have this, we need this. But the form was to get the municipal light board in place, and that worked. We did that in spades. We were actually criticized for an over-the-top campaign because we took out full-page ads. We bought, let's see here, I got a copy of this. Hang on, I gotta turn off my background for you to see it. How do I choose virtual background and then none? Okay, there we
There you
go.
go.
Okay, this is Susan Crawford's great book on fiber, and it has a companion book by Susan Crawford called Captive Audience, which is about the cable monopoly. And anyway, we took this book and we bought, I think, 275 copies and gave one to every member of town meeting and to every member of town government. We were criticized for, this is unprecedented. We don't do things like this. We're a small town, et cetera, but we got 93% and 86% of the vote in 2 consecutive votes. So that kind of rule breaking, I'm all about it. So we established a municipal light board. That was good. Along the way, we could have and should have done a better job at educating our community as to what we have. And Gigi helped us to some extent. I've got some, we could tune up the message that she gave, but Wendy did a very good job of recounting it. So thank you. But what I've been trying to say right now is that we have 4 priorities for a fiber optic network that covers 100%, that passes 100% of Falmouth's homes and businesses. And the first priority is the fiber optic network itself. The network that Comcast has is a hybrid fiber coax network, and it has points of failure, and it's constantly needs maintenance and upgrading, and the drops deteriorate, and it's been shown time and time again that an all fiber to the home network that doesn't have any significant electronics, doesn't have any it has let's see, the design was like 5 electronics hubs in the whole town. So there's only 5 places other than individual homes where there's electronics. Everything else is pure glass from those 5 huts out to each home. So that provides, and this is nerdy, okay? This is sort of what Gigi told us not to say, but the reason that it's important is that it provides almost flawless performance. You don't need humans to go around and tune things up and upgrade things because the network is extremely simple and the operational costs are very, very low. And study after study have shown that fiber networks win on OPEX. Operational expenses are just really low. So that means that a town or even a private entity, I mean, if Comcast would bite the bullet, spend $50 million on Falmouth and build an all fiber to the home network, then they would at least they would realize economic benefits, and if they were public spirited, they'd cut the rates, but of course they wouldn't do that. But well, so I talked early in the game in before the MLP was established, several of us on FalmouthNet talked to the operator, the general manager of the Longmont, Colorado network. Now, Longmont, Colorado has a municipal ordinance that says that the profits from the Longmont, Colorado network have to be used for the Longmont, Colorado network. And he was telling us that he has a big problem. He's throwing off so much cash that he doesn't know what to do with it. He's expanded his network as much as possible, and he was just going to have to cut everybody's rate across the board. I mean, geez, what a problem. So, that's the kind of failure, quote unquote, that mass priorities would. Well, that it's not a failure. So anyway, so priority 1 for Falmouth is to get that all fiber network, passes 100% of our homes and businesses, and is pure glass from one of 5 huts out to each individual home. Priority number 2 is competition against Comcast. Of course, we need to discipline them in the marketplace. We've already seen them upgrading like crazy around Falmouth because they know Falmouth is a hot spot of potential competition. And we'd like to see them cut their rates. I calculate that Falmouth spends about $30 million in Comcast fees. This is taking the feasibility study data. We had, by the way, a really awesome feasibility study, and if you haven't read it, you should read it. And You might even consider getting one for Bourne. It's a gold mine. But so I took the data in the feasibility study and I figured that something like $30 million a year goes across the bridge to Wall Street and Comcast headquarters in Philadelphia. It may be 25, it may be 35. About half of that's probably internet. It's hard to know because they bundle these things, but you can do once you have the feasibility study, you can sit there with your pencil and your back of the envelope and do the math, do the arithmetic. So let's see. So that's priority number 2 is competition against Comcast. Priority number 3 is local control, and that basically we as a town want to serve everybody in town. We've been very strong about 100% coverage. We've talked to some companies that go, listen, for 50% of that cost, we could do 80% of the town and stuff like that. We want to act as a whole town and make sure that there aren't digitally redlined areas. And we also can go for things like, I mean, if you're controlling a local network, you can insist that network follow the principles of network neutrality, for example. You can insist that they have rate plans that will include low-income households. And there are other things that you can do if you have a governance voice in the network. And then the fourth thing, of course, is downstream participation in year 5, 6, 7, 8, when the network is throwing off and more than enough cash to pay back any debt, pay investors and whatever, that the town has access to that revenue stream. So those are the 4 priorities that I've been talking about: the fiber optic network itself, competition against Comcast, local control, and revenue stream participation. So that's kind of the middle, and I'm happy to go out in either direction. Bob, how's that for an intro?
That's fantastic. Just a quick question. In terms of the MLP, without going into the details of who responded to I guess it was the RFI, et cetera.
Yeah.
Where do you think the MLP is going in the near to middle term here?
Well, that's a really good question. The MLP, first of all, the chairman of the MLP, who's a former selectman, just announced this week that he's stepping off the out-of-town government altogether. Sam Patterson has been a great force for science and rationality, and on the select board and then on the MLP. He served as chair for a year, but he's 80 years old. He has grandkids in Connecticut, and he's feeling like he's done with town government. So he's stepping off, and there may be other changes coming up in the May election. We don't know. So things are a little bit in flux. Some of the members of the MLP have expressed doubt that in an all private, we're entertaining 2 proposals for companies to come in to town, bring their own money, build the network, sign up customers, and collect the revenues and own the network. And the MLP does not believe that it has a role there. I disagree. I think that Chapter 164 is written broadly enough that the MLP can make any kind of deal at once for utility services. but I'm not a lawyer. I just read and I'm not familiar with case law. So I don't really, I'm kind of curious how that one plays out. The town clearly has a role to play, even in the event that a private company invests, builds, owns, and runs the network. I believe the town still has a role to play. It's still going to be an advantage to the town to have a second competing network that is an all fiber network. So I'm hoping that there will be some form of town realization of this. Maybe it's not the MLP, maybe it's a cable committee. As you may, I don't know if you guys know or not, but a municipal light plant is governed by an entirely different section of Massachusetts law than town government. It is not a part of town government with just a couple of exceptions. And those exceptions are first, that the town treasurer or finance director keeps the MLP's books and keeps the MLP's account in a separate, totally separate account, but that the town treasurer keeps that account. Another one is that in the event of any major expenditure or network expansion, that's subject to a town vote, a town meeting vote. And I believe 2/3 approval. So if the town builds, acquires, a network, then major repairs is another one. Then the town meeting has to approve. And I don't know what that means if a private network wants to come in and build, but I would bet that the town needs to approve it. And I think it's a really good idea because, again, even if it's like the Red Sox aren't owned by the city of Boston or anything, but we still think of it as our team. And we could still think of a private network as our network. So it would really be helpful if the town would roll out, if we decided to go with the private entity, we would roll out the red carpet and go, yes, we want you, we love you, what can we do to make you a success? You're our network, we're your town. And because the health of a network is actually dependent on in its early years, it's dependent on the rate of acquisition of new customers. So if you get to positive cash flow in 3 years, you've got a much more healthy network than if you get to positive cash flow in 6 or 7 years, or never get there. You can asymptote at 35% and never get there. But so the town has a big role to play, even in the event of a private network. I don't know how that's going to work. Okay. I don't know the future of the MLP. I hope they own the problem, even they decide they own the problem, even though even if it's a private network. I think there are ways to get ownership stakes, even if a private network brings 100% of the money to town. I think there are ways to negotiate with the private entities so that things break in favor of the town. And I think that Falmouth is still ahead of other towns on Cape Cod, in as far as I know, because we have an MLP. We've been thinking about it for several years. We've got a feasibility study. We've got a high-level design, and the town government has some level of education in the process. I'll stop here. I don't know if I'm rambling.
No,
I
that's
just have a
good.
I have a question about, so what you're saying is that at the moment, um, Falmouth is possibly not exploring the idea of owning the network and leasing it out to a private entity who will supply the capital to build out the network and reap benefits from it, but not technically own it. That hasn't been explored.
That's actually one of the scenarios on the table,
Okay.
that the town could own the glass on the poles.
Because we've been had some very informal discussions with various entities, and I believe Brian would know better. I believe that was one model that was proposed, was
Yeah,
the idea that a company could come in and they would finance the upfront capital costs. They would then operate the network for a certain fee, but that the town would technically own it, which would give you a little bit more leverage in terms of pricing and service. Basically, you would not be
Yeah,
you'd be
that
able to
was
determine that.
that was a model where it's basically they guarantee a return on equity for a certain number of years and then turn over at the end of 10 years or something, the network or under whatever conditions. So it's almost like a rent to own, so to speak, kind of
Right,
structure is the
exactly. Yeah.
closest structure to it. But yeah, at the end, the town would receive it or receive it under set conditions and whatnot.
So in that case, it would require, I would think, that the municipal light board, someone from some town entity would have to be involved in terms of just acting as an interface between the town and this private developer. Would that be the case?
I can't imagine a situation where there isn't a designated entity between the network operator and the town, in no matter what the scenario is.
Just keep in mind that the more complicated these structures get with the financing and the further you are removed from a issued bond by a town, your costs increase a lot. So private equity is looking 20 to 30% equity returns plus leverage. So they're looking for very high returns. Potentially they're getting private placement debt guaranteed by the network. So versus just a revenue bond, which is a lot cheaper. So yeah, these things look awesome, but you increase the cost to the town indirectly, albeit.
Has there been any thought of one of the things, David, that we've discussed, because Tony down there was involved with operating a municipal network in Westfield, and he indicated that one of the concerns was not just the internet part of it, but essentially the cable TV part of it, and trying to convince people to go with streaming services. Has any of that been explored in terms of what kind of market penetration you're going to get with customers if you can't supply basically what is Comcast type cable television, but only the internet?
Our feasibility study assumed that it was a fiber only situation, and they predicted 62% take rate after 5 years. That's a prediction that was I'm not sure what the error bars are on that prediction. Let me put it that way. But first of all, conventional TV is cratering. Like about Comcast is losing 7 or 8% a year, 10% a year of their conventional linear cable TV subscribers, and they're planning for an all streaming future right now. And at least one small cable TV company has abandoned the channelized delivery of entertainment services. I think that by the time this network is built, there will be just a few old people like myself. Actually, I've gone over to all streaming, and I think there's so many benefits to all streaming that once people realize that this is an alternative, that there'll be a cascading effect. There are now 2 companies in Falmouth that are devoted to helping people cut the cord and go to all streaming TV. I think it's just a
something or other
trend.
Gadgets, as I recall.
Sorry?
Say again?
One of the companies is, I can't remember the name, but it ends in Gadgets, and it's a
Easy Gadget something. Gadgets
exactly.
are easy or something like that. Anyway, yes. My fantasy has been that there would be a volunteer force to help people, but if there's a business in it, so much the better.
And it's
Well,
a clean business, you know, and it's going to be helpful, especially if you're talking about, you know, old folks that are having a hard time getting away from the channel thing versus streaming. We're old people here, and we're 100% streaming.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
just a comment, along with what John said. When I was at Westfield at Whip City Fiber, rolling out these services, you assume that a lot of people will just jump on board. They need a lot of hand-holding to move from regular cable TV to streaming services only. And at
Sure.
the beginning, it
there's
takes a
gonna
lot
be-
of effort, both from a marketing standpoint to acquire the customers, and then from a customer service standpoint to basically hold their hands and help them get on board and get away from Comcast, because so many people are used to just using their channel clicker and moving to a different channel. And streaming is a little bit more involved, and it just takes some time to help people move away from cable TV to streaming.
If I can
There
teach
are
an
always gonna
88-year-old
be-
guy to do this, anybody can do this.
Well, there are always going to be people who are behind the curve. When I was at AT&T in the 90s, there were still people renting their telephones.
Oh yeah.
I think there are still people paying AOL $9.95 a month for an email address, even though they don't need to. People just a significant sector of people don't want to change. We don't want to spend a lot of time or money or effort worrying about those people. We want to get the people who do want to change, and we figure that's about 60% of our town.
Just as a comment along these lines, I've been reading some of the digital equity plans that are now being published through various Massachusetts communities. And one of the recommendations along these lines is the idea of digital navigators, whether they're volunteered or paid for. They basically would work out of the library or some community center, and provide people with help basically to do these sorts of things. It's not just streaming, but I think in general, the idea is to get people more comfortable with the internet through these digital navigators. And it's shown up in just about every plan that I've seen.
Yeah,
I think when the digital equity plan does come out, that's going to be one of the recommendations, is that, the 3 parts of that are the connectivity, the actual hardware on your desk, and then the last part is how to use that. And it doesn't take much to expand to talk about educating people in how to do the streaming. Perhaps at some point, if we move in that direction, we might want to have whoever runs Gadgets Made Easy or whomever, just invite them to come in and do a hybrid in-person presentation at the library that we can put on Bourne TV.
This sounds like a terrific Eagle project for a couple of older Eagle Scouts. They could put this together. It wouldn't require, getting hardware and wood and paint and stuff like that, but it could be a tremendous town service. And, these guys can do anything,
It can, but you also have to realize that, for instance, like when you are streaming, for instance, if your stream suddenly goes out or becomes intermittent, there are more points of failure that are not part of the network. For instance, if your
Mhm.
wireless router goes astray, as I happen to me, okay, well, you know, when your cable goes out, you can call Comcast. They're going to send the guy over. Admittedly, you're paying a lot of money for this. When your wireless router goes out, well, that's not this, you know, if you're subscribed to say YouTube TV, that's not YouTube's problem. So there is a bit of education that's involved. And I don't know, Tony, how you guys dealt with that in Westfield. If you say somebody had a problem internal to their home.
Yeah, what we did within Westfield, we actually sent texts out at no cost to people's houses. We had people whose batteries on the remotes died and they were complaining that they didn't have service. I mean, there's a whole myriad of things that you run into once you have this network that you need to address to keep the customers happy, basically. So, I mean, there is, you know, a lot of people are tech savvy, and a lot of people need their hands held as well. And I think that the digital navigators that Jed mentioned is a great idea. We used to have actually tech days where, whether it was in Westfield or one of the towns that Whip City Fiber was serving, we'd send a couple of texts out to a town on a given day at the town hall or in a library or something like that. And they'd be there to answer the questions of all the people who came in and had questions for them. So you're right, John. There are non-network issues that come up that people automatically assume it's a network, and it's not always the case.
Right. And so, and if the town owns it, then so that's just I'm just pointing that out as we talk about the changeover from cable TV and the model that people think of, and you know, I'm a relatively tech savvy person. I can figure this out, but I think about sometimes some of my older neighbors and how they might have difficulty. The one advantage I do see to it in terms of tourists is that when you take a streaming service, most of the time it's portable. I have this friend that's moved from several places around in New England recently, and he just carries his YouTube TV with him, whether he was up in Maine or living in Methuen or he was down in North Carolina for a while. He just has his subscription, and wherever he is, that's where he streams, and he doesn't have to pay anything additional. Basically.
Yeah, we found it was very important to have long customer service hours that customers could call and ask questions, to talk to a tech to help them, you know, probably work through a solution rather than needing to send a tech to the house.
Kevin Trembley from Open Cape mentioned exactly that problem as one of the big hurdles in the way of Open Cape being able to move from the big industrial user, the enterprise user, to the Main Street Buzzards Bay commercial user, and then to the residential user is exactly that. The level of I'll just use the word ignorance, but lack of familiarity with all of the parts of the moving that can go wrong in the system, and the inability of a small organization like them to provide service to people, as opposed to Comcast call center in Mindanao.
Oh, when I was
this is
at
just
the
another reason why
FCC,
I'm sorry, this is also speaks to Gigi's point about attracting younger, more tech savvy people to your town. They're, you know, not just because they're going to be taxpayers and they're going to spend their money locally, but because they're going to expect to have a more reliable service than they're ever going to get. They're going to be experienced with streaming as opposed to channel services. And this is going to be a good thing. I think the demand over time is going to decrease, just as when telephony was shared lines between a neighborhood. You know, that we don't do that anymore. That the people that relied on that, and that was their familiar model, they're kind of gone now. And the ones that aren't gone have learned how to use modern telephones, and some of them even have cell phones. So, you know, I think when you're looking ahead, when you're trying to plan ahead for what you want for your town, I think you have to take a longer term view. And that's an educational component that we can do as an advisory committee.
Mhm.
That's the point.
David, you had a comment there?
The customer service component is critical.
Mhm.
The call it digital navigator or gadgets made easy or whatever, or just help desk. When I was at the FCC, I became aware that there were several communities where they had their own network and they were at 70% or higher take rate, despite the fact that these towns had a cable internet offering and a telephone internet offering, that they had their local service, their local network was 70% take rate or higher. And so in my capacity as a participant in the National Broadband Plan, I called up the managers of 5 of these high take rate cities, and I interviewed them for quite a while, each one of them, but along the way, I asked them what was their success rate due to, and uniformly, it was due to local customer service. The fact that the person that answered the phone spoke their language, knew where they lived. In one case, the fellow said, "Yes, Mrs. Jones, you're right on my way home. I'll come over and reboot the computer for you." Whatever. The local touch on customer service outweighs network performance, outweighs pricing, outweighs just about everything.
Mm-hmm.
At least it did in 2009.
Okay. David, I want to thank you very much for your time here. Feel free to hang on, and you want to hear some of the other nuts and bolts of what we're doing, feel free to listen in. Otherwise, thank you for your time. I have one other question for you with regard to your discussions with the 2 other entities. Has either of them talked about using Falmouth, a Falmouth system as kind of their landing point to build a bigger network that spreads out to other towns, like Bourne, maybe?
Well,
Yes.
first of all, everyone that is in favor of the network in Falmouth that I know of would love to see Falmouth be a model for or a base for regional expansion, because we understand the advantages and we know that our neighboring towns have the same problems we do. So yes.
Great. Okay. Fantastic.
And we know that one of the companies is also talking to Open Cape. We don't know the status of that discussion, or I don't know the status of that discussion, but I know that Open Cape is also considering what it would take to do a regional fiber to the home build out.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'd also heard rumors that they had been one of the entities that applied for one of those $20 million gap network grants, and haven't heard anything further. Yep.
Okay.
I guess we'll hear when MBI tells us. Okay. With that, I want to thank you very much, and I'm going to move on to the next item on our agenda here. Let me pull that up again. One moment. Yes, our next issue is we need to talk about how to move forward with going through and reviewing and perhaps summarizing all of the information that the MBI folks sent us under that I guess it was an open access request that we sent a while ago. I've gone through some of it. Some of the spreadsheets are very interesting. There are huge place-based tables of data, and I don't have the slightest idea of how to review them. What I'd like to propose is maybe we could get a small subcommittee of a couple of folks to just sit and review that and and try to come up with a way to summarize that, so we have that in place when we start to get some of the speed test and other data that comes back from the digital equity planning study, et cetera. I think we really need to do that, and we're going to need to say where the gaps are with regard to all of those data if we go ask for more funding for speed testing.
So Bob, my question on that is that the census tract data is using some kind of a data format that we can't read basically with a traditional app like a Word or Excel or something. That's the issue. I mean, I've been through the other stuff. It's pretty easy to read, but the census tract data, I don't know how to open it up. Has anyone else figured it out?
Is now a question for you, is that possibly the Rosetta Stone here is the Cost Quest data from the FCC, from that database?
Could be, yeah, it could be the
Okay.
Cost Quest tool that you use. I don't know.
Okay, the Cost Quest, I'm going to jump ahead a couple of items here. The town did submit and got an FCC registration number, and then partially applied for the Cost Quest access license. And I got an email asking for us to set a password. And I have not done anything with that just yet. I was expecting this came in the day before our select board, the day of our select board presentation, and I thought we were going to do this last Thursday. Would anybody like to volunteer to try to? I'll send that request along. Ask for or set a password for us, and then be kind of the custodian of getting into the Cost Quest data, and see whether that in fact provides the information to all of the place-based data in those very complex files.
I don't
not
see
sure.
Brian jumping on it, so I'll do it.
Well, maybe a couple of folks ought to do it. Okay, Jed, I'm going to send it to
I'm
you.
fine doing it. Yeah, sure, I'm fine doing it.
Okay, I will send that on to you. And again, it's just setting a password and then digging in. And if in fact,
Jed, if you need any help, pass some stuff on to me. My schedule is a little crowded right now, but if I can give you any help, at least once we crack it open to try to figure out what it is.
Yeah.
Are we sure the Cost Quest is the Rosetta Stone, or are we just?
Well, it's I can't remember if it's the MBI data, but we also got data from the Cape Cod Commission that was also in a funny form.
So the Cost Quest license has been executed by the town, correct?
Yes, and they sent along a request. An email came from Cost Quest to me saying, "Go ahead and set a password," and I'll pass.
So we
that
may want to forward this email to both the Cape Cod Commission and MBI so that they now know we have a tier 2 license. And then when we request location data from any of their slides, they are allowed to legally reveal it instead of telling us that they can't anymore.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point.
Well, I don't think we should pass anything along because the Cost Quest license belongs to the town, not the Cape Cod Commission. So if we are
they have one
the
too.
whole idea is to access that information through that license. We shouldn't be spreading it out to whoever entity that we need to have full control over it.
Yeah.
So
I
that
think
is one of the
that
terms of the license, that 2 licensees can share data.
That's the point. Yeah, we're not
That's the whole
asking
Share
point
the
of doing it.
data.
Yeah,
Share the
rather than-
data. That's it.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, well, that's
So
the
this
point.
was the license needed. So whenever CCC makes a slide, and then we ask them, hey, could you send us the backup data? Before they could not share it, but now that we have a level 2 license, they are legally allowed to share that, so that whenever they do any work and heavy lifting, we can ask for the backup data.
Okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send this to both Brian and Jed. Jed, I'll leave you. You have control over it. Set a password, and then go in and just start to look at the data, see if that would provide access or information on the MBI data. And
yeah,
then
I remember it's either that or remember we got that pile of UCLA data. It may also open up access to that also.
yes. Okay. Let me just write this down.
Yeah, it looks like it's the same format.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll take a look at that.
Okay. Depending on
Awesome.
timing here, I'll try to send that on this morning. I've got to I have to run out for a medical appointment here in a while, but
Okay.
if not, I'll have it out late today when I get back from the hopefully a short procedure. Having light complected skin on Cape Cod and getting old is not a good I'm going in for my third Mohs procedure here in a few minutes, a little bit.
Yeah,
Having another chunk of skin taken out.
yeah, been there, done that. I got that's all.
Okay.
Okay.
Again, we skipped item E, media outreach. Wendy, have you been able to write anything for the presentation to the enterprise at all?
Well, as you know, I did send along the job description trying to get people to apply for the open position on our committee. I haven't heard anything back on that yet.
I haven't even seen it in the paper.
No, I know it.
Could you resend the same description to Callie and ask her to see if she could post that again?
Yeah, I will. The other thing is that because our minutes are public information, I've been sending her our minutes as soon as they're approved, so she can see what's going on with that, and she's finding that helpful. They did have in the Falmouth Enterprise a little while back a big write-up of Gigi's presentation there. I don't know whether that was copied over to the Bourne Enterprise side, but if it hasn't, I'm gonna ask her if she'll do that.
Okay, that's useful. Okay, well, so other than just trying
Hold
to
on a minute. Wendy, what minutes are you sending to who?
The approved minutes from our committee, which are public record, and I'm sharing those with the Bourne Enterprise. So because they can't always send somebody to our meetings. And
Well, no, you can't send the meetings directly to them. Meetings go to the town clerk. They are
yes,
public, but they have to go through the public access record process. You can't directly send them to the media. They have to request public access to it. They can review this cable TV program and formulate whatever information they'd like, but those records of the minutes of meetings, if people want them, they have to go through the proper process.
Yeah, I guess
The
they have to be,
public records access process.
yeah, they have to
Why?
be stamped, right? They have to be,
why is that?
That's
Well,
the law.
yeah, they have to be stamped and then registered as public documents by the
Yes.
clerk.
And
But
Can we just start
and
posting our minutes and
Well,
they,
no, I have an idea. Why don't we just, Wendy, why don't you just send them the link from the town website?
Sure,
There you
I
go.
can do that.
Because that's where the minutes are posted, and then once you do that, they've accessed it through the publicly accessible way, and there shouldn't
Sure.
be any issue there, right? Would that be
Exactly.
okay, Anne Marie?
Sure, and
Yeah.
fine, I can do that. Are
Yeah.
there any other delay steps that I need to work into this process? Because we're already getting more and more and more delay built in. And if one of our charges is to educate the public, it seems to me that putting up more and more and more roadblocks or procedures or
that's the
whatever.
law, Wendy.
I understand that
We're
part.
not
I
going
got
to
that.
circumvent the law.
I
Can I,
got
can
that
I,
part.
can I
I
make
got
a
that.
suggestion?
Sure.
What if we just, instead of sending them the minutes, what if you just sent them a summary of what we discussed? Not
I
the
can do
formal
that.
minutes, but a
Sure.
summary.
Well,
Those
Then you
have
have
to
to-
be approved by this committee. That's media outreach. Any media, it has to be approved by this committee before it goes.
So that's the same as writing an article for them, and so it
Yes,
has
it
to come
is.
back here and review it,
Yes.
It is.
yes,
review and approve. I mean, you know, we're meeting on an extremely fast pace here, once a week. You know, we've been doing that for 6 months now, and you know, a 1 or 2 week turnaround on some of our information, getting it to the press. At least in terms of outreach from us, is extremely fast. Most of the other committees only meet once a month or even less frequently.
Mhm.
So, the enterprise can attend our meetings if they want access to the info.
Certainly true.
And
they
they
have.
can watch it online.
Yeah, and they can watch
review
it online too.
Oftentimes,
Exactly,
that's
right.
what they do. They can't make it to our meetings, select board meetings. They review it after the fact.
Mhm.
Okay. So is everybody clear about that? Okay. let
Sure.
me get-
So we can legally send them a link to the posted
Oh,
minutes.
sure.
That would be okay. So we can do that. And that way it would be their initiative basically to search them out, which shouldn't be
And
too hard.
that assumes that they're published and
Right,
posted
assuming,
timely.
right. Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
as soon as
you
they
can-
show up on the town website.
You can also send them a
Well,
link.
there you go. As soon as they show up. And when's that going to be?
You can also send them a link to the recording on Bourne TV.
Are we going
Yeah,
to
or
keep
YouTube.
doing that?
Yeah, I mean.
And if you want, I mean, anybody can do that.
Sure.
No, I understand that. I had heard some rumor that there was unhappiness with posting.
It's being broadcast right
recorded.
now, Wendy.
I understand that. I understand that. I'm not sure that this is going to go on indefinitely and reliably. I'm happy to be disabused of that notion.
Just the point I heard is that Bourne Community TV would love content. Essentially, would love timely content, and this is one meeting that with the whole everything is happening online, so it's readable. Anything that gets presented can be seen by people on the YouTube channel, so they're very happy with it. So
That'd be great.
So for the time being, that's
It's
going to
it's public meeting. The Bourne TV has every right to
sure.
Of course
Exactly.
they do.
broadcast.
I know that sometimes when we do a screen share of a document, it's almost illegible because of the quality of the transfer. So that's sort of not really public education. It's not really public access.
Well, hopefully Comcast will fix that. It's in the
Yeah.
works for this year.
Yeah, hope is not a plan. Okay.
Okay, with that, I'm gonna move forward. A liaison with legislators and staff. I will note that at least I heard via description that the Open Cape session with Gigi Son was attended by at least representatives of 3 or 4 of the Cape Cod delegation. That list was not on the screen or public. There are only 4 presenters who could be seen on the screen, but they are very aware of at least Gigi Son's presentation and some of the discussions there. We have not had any other contact other than this bridges into the next item in terms of a point of contact for the bridge infrastructure. I did have a conversation with, let me get his card here. Brian, this is after you left, with Mark Lanigan, who's he's a regional legislative assistant for Senator Markey, who said he was approaching the Corps of Engineers to identify a point of contact, and he was going. As you probably figured, the Corps is somewhat balkanized. You hear that all the time in terms of us trying to get dredging permits and things like that. So he was going right to the district colonel to ask specifically who was in charge of anything in terms of access across any of the bridges, either the existing ones or the new ones. So hopefully we will hear back from that. Any other?
Just a quickie. We talked a couple of months, maybe not a couple of months ago, but a couple of meetings ago on the idea that maybe somebody could, I don't know, run a cable under the canal. We realized that this is probably not going to happen, but it was out there. My brother is involved in a lot of things around the canal involving cables and electricity and technological stuff. And I asked him about this, and he said the reason you can't do that is because they dredge it every now and then, and it'll just dig it right up. So they won't let anybody put anything in the floor of the canal. So never mind.
Well, the one exception to that is, again, it is
Natural gas.
is putting gas that is going to be 50 feet below the controlled depth of the canal. Okay,
Yeah.
and that's a major activity, and Nothing else is going to go near that, and they're
Sure.
still in the process of negotiating with the Corps over that.
Yep.
So
And
that's
there's already an overhead way. It's just a matter of
Yeah.
sorting it out. It's going to end up being cheaper whenever we run the numbers to just
Yep.
shove it back into the conduit that's already there.
right. Okay. So I think we are done with that. Anne Marie, if you happen to hear of anything about somebody who's a point of contact at one of the advisory committee meetings, let us know.
Yeah,
But
we haven't had a meeting in a while, so I
Yeah.
anticipate having one fairly shortly by spring.
Okay. Well, again, this legislative aide's name is Mark Lanigan, and he's based in Boston as opposed to in DC. In any case, he's the point person for in-state for fiber for Senator Markey, and he's got a cohort in DC who's deals with fiber issues on a national basis for Senator Markey, who is on, I don't know the name of the committee, but one committee is in the Senate is heavily involved in this.
You know, he's planning to meet with Mass Tech that MBI reports to in the near future as well to sort out the chain of command.
Okay. That clearly is not super urgent. It's just if they're in the planning stages, we want to make sure that they consider the needs of us and the rest of Barnstable County. Okay, with that, I think we've gone through our agenda. My next question for you is, other than trying to sort through some of the speed test data, my question is, do we really need to continue meeting weekly right now?
Nope. I don't think so.
Yes, with
Yeah.
upcoming grants.
Well,
What would we do next week?
We would need to be dealing with the Muni Fiber grant pretty soon.
What about next week? What do we do? Here, I'll put up what I've been working on slowly for an agenda for next week. I mean, I don't know that we really need to hit all this stuff next week. We could put it off for the following week.
We could always call a meeting if.
well,
something
that's
came up
the
urgent.
point. If any of us hear that Comcast, or I should say MBI has released their Gap Network grant funds, or they've announced the $100,000 funds, or the Cape Cod Commission's digital equity study comes in. If any of those happen, I'm gonna line up everybody, and then with obviously the 48-hour notice, I'm gonna call a meeting. So we'll get that right away. We don't necessarily have to meet on Thursday, but we can call a meeting if one of these events, should I say, or milestones is hit or crossed.
All right.
We've got the speed testing data to look at. We've got the Muni grant. We got Gap Round 2 to start planning for, because MBI has talked about being more flexible. And we need to plan for a meeting with MBI on the speed testing rules as far as speed.
I think all of those can be grouped. Brian, my feeling is all of those can be grouped in one meeting in 2 weeks. And we can again go through each of those in some detail. The review of the speed testing data, Jed, with some help from perhaps John, is going to start looking at that.
Yeah.
If it looks like you need more help and we need to do that in an entire committee, Jed can get back to me and I'll call a meeting. I'll
Right.
call the meeting and move it up.
And a lot of that stuff you talked about, Brian, we can meet it as a subcommittee and go through a lot of that, and then come to the committee with sort of decision level kind of conversations as opposed to review level. And that all can happen outside of this committee meeting.
Did we propose a subcommittee for this purpose back under reviewing information of the public access?
We could.
I think we also need to add informing the public higher up on our to-do list, given that a lot of moving parts here, and I don't think we're doing a good enough job informing the general public.
I'm with you on
Yeah,
that.
and you have to remember too, all of this has to go through the select board, and the select board has to, advise the select board, and the select board makes the ultimate decision on whether we are pursuing this, any type of grants. and what that grant
Oh,
is going to
of
be
course,
used for?
Of course.
Right.
Of
Okay,
course.
so
But information about the grant and
Yes,
things,
yes,
that's
yes,
within
but-
our charge to go after.
Yeah, so
Right.
like I said, it would, three people can go and meet offline and develop ideas for the committee to pursue and then bring them to the committee for a broader discussion. This doesn't mean things stand still. We just meet in groups of three.
Right. Okay, so can I make a formal recommendation that we form a subcommittee to review the information from the MBI Public Access Office and develop recommendations for the full advisory committee to consider?
Sure, I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay. So, Jed, you had already started to volunteer to take a lead on this. John had volunteered
No, I
too.
think these are, I get the sense these are separate things, Bob.
Okay,
Maybe I'm wrong. So one of them is to take the CostQuest license and look at the data from MBI and Cape Cod Commission. And I think the other was to look at the grant opportunities and other public communication that we ought to do. Did I get that right, or did I miss?
Yeah, that sounds
Right.
right.
yeah,
Okay.
okay, so we're talking about, actually, I see three separate events here. Jed, you were talking about the CostQuest license. Brian, you've got a good handle on, the grant opportunities. And then maybe Wendy and I can be a subcommittee to talk about outreach to the public of how we start to talk to the public about opportunities here. And that might be something we can put together as almost a small column that we can write for the enterprise after we run it through the committee. Does that sound like three separate workable activities?
Okay. Sort of. Okay, so the first subcommittee is to review the data and make recommendations. Yes?
I don't know if we're ready for recommendations. We're trying to get the CostQuest tool to work.
Right.
So
And we
can
have to
look
then
at
analyze the data. Right.
Yeah, we just want to get the tool to work and then look at the data.
Okay, so I will amend my motion to strike make recommendations and add review and analyze.
Yeah, review and analyze data from MBI and Cape Cod Commission.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Okay, and then
and that would be Jed and John. Yes?
Yeah.
to start,
Okay. So is that seconded?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Okay, should we vote on that? And then we can do the next one?
okay, all those in favor
Aye.
of
I
the data subcommittee?
Okay. Now the second one was what?
Well, let's go in the order that Jed has put in the outline there. Public outreach opportunities.
Yeah, I'm happy to change the order here. I'm just trying to take notes.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
That'll work. Okay. Again, this is a small subcommittee consisting of right now of Wendy and me to look for opportunities to reach out and educate the public. Do I have a motion to establish this?
I'll move.
Jed moves.
Second.
Seconded.
Okay. Brian seconds. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Seeing no opposition. And the third is to look for and prepare for upcoming funding opportunities. Okay. And
Should we add another item to respond to the select board's concerns of our proposal or our presentation?
That's a different topic, right?
yeah, that is
Yeah,
a
we need
different
topic.
topic, right?
Yeah.
But
Okay, so subcommittee to investigate funding proposals? Is that what you said?
keep track of funding opportunities. Track and
Investigate and track funding opportunities.
right.
Okay. And who's going to do that?
Oh, that's That was Brian, I think. Can we task you? You've got a good handle on what some of these are. You've been tracking that.
Yeah, I guess I can put together a list of the dates of the opportunities that are coming up, since there's a surprising number we got to deal with pretty shortly. So
Anybody else with Ryan on this? Or
Well, to the extent that I'll work with Brian to the extent that information comes into me, but he's got a better handle on. He's been
okay.
watching more of the traffic on all of these.
Okay.
we might have some more info on gap round 2 from MBI soon, so we may want to add a line item to address gap round 2, because
Well,
that's going to be shortly.
doesn't that fall under investigating and
Yep.
tracking opportunities?
Yeah, gap round 2 and a municipal fiber grant, maybe add as sub bullets.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a procedural question. How can they go and solicit requests for proposals for gap round 2 when they haven't announced who wins gap round 1?
I
Well,
just
there's
put
that.
in the FOIA request requesting the information on gap round 1, just in case it's public and they haven't, publicized it.
Gotten around to letting the public know about it. Love that company. Love that organization.
Okay, so motion to establish a third subcommittee to investigate and track funding opportunities and grants and so forth, consisting of Brian and Bob.
Okay, Wendy proposed,
Made.
and somebody second?
Second.
Okay,
Okay.
Tony second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Okay, so we have 3 subcommittees being established.
and the item that Jed just put in there, respond to the select board concerns about the content of the presentation. Right now, is my understanding is that the select board has taken this under advisement.
Hmm.
And Anne Marie, is there anything scheduled where they're actually going to come with a response?
I don't know that there's going to be a response. I think we're going to have as an agenda item to further discuss the direction and determine what priorities are.
Okay, okay,
Um,
and
I don't,
clearly,
you won't get a formal response. It'll
Right.
be it'll be more discussion.
okay, when keep us apprised of that when it's going to be on the agenda. There'll
I
be a
will,
couple of us in the room.
correct.
Bob, should we consider possibly regarding some of these concerns, meeting in an executive session? So that whatever comments we make are amongst ourselves for that moment?
The
We can't
reasons
have
for executive
we don't
session are
have,
fairly well
we don't
designed.
have any grounds for executive session.
Right.
We have to identify a mass general law and the reasons for the through mass general law and the reasons and we have no grounds. We're just a public,
Right, you
just a
can't just
public
decide,
advisory committee.
right, you can't just decide to meet an executive committee. There's
No.
specific requirements that you have to meet in order to be an executive session.
Okay.
And we don't have any.
Mhm.
MJ, at least, just in terms of where this sits within the big universe of everything else that's going on in town, is has talked to me several times. I've shared a little bit of that back and forth, but if something major comes up about this, and I will keep this on as the agenda item, and then I will certainly bring it forward. And Anne Marie, if you hear anything that she's got a concern before one of these open sessions, I would be happy to bring that forward and discuss it in open meeting here. So that's on the agenda right there, is that item E, and it looks good to me. Okay.
Are you okay with the order, Bob? You want me to move things around?
Perhaps move the funding opportunities up to the second item, only because if it turns out that something is hot, we may want to discuss that immediately, and then public outreach would follow from that, if you know what I
Okay.
mean.
Yep.
Does that make
Got it.
sense?
Okay, yep.
And the media outreach review and approval ought to be a subset under Public Outreach Opportunity Subcommittee.
Okay,
There you go. Yep,
Yeah.
that's good.
and we'll put this over here. I gotta fix that.
And I think for the time being, we can leave the point of contact for the bridge in place just in case we hear something back. But it's just a placeholder in for the time being, I guess.
Hmm. Okay.
Okay. And tentatively, let me look at the calendar again. That's somewhere around the 6th of March, I think.
7th.
7th. Very good.
Yeah, the 7th is the date, it's the Thursday. Yeah, that's what I
Yep.
put it down as. Yep.
We'll leave that there. And again, if anything hot or with short response time comes up, I reserve the right to with 48-hour notice to call a meeting and get as many of us together. If it turns out MBI comes out with a request for proposals that's has a 2-week turnaround, we have to jump on it right away.
Mhm.
Okay.
So our next meeting date is March 7th and not March
March 7th.
1st?
March 7th, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. 2 weeks.
I'm away the 6th through the 10th, but I can probably start that meeting on the 7th and then just turn it over to Bob. I'll
Okay.
be in Utah at that point.
Okay. If it turns out
You've
there's
got good internet out there.
Yes, they do.
yeah, you'll probably be on Utopia Internet. Just see how it works.
Oh, man. That system is so beautiful. I get sick every time I watch that.
It's absolutely gorgeous. Home runs the whole way. My God,
Yeah.
Right.
jealous.
Anyway, with regard to that, let me just look at, if it turns out you can't make that connection because it's going to be early in the morning for you, I'll just talk to Maria and I'll get Maria or Kathleen to start it at 8:30 when they get in the office, and we'll just delay for a half hour.
It shouldn't be a problem starting the meeting.
Okay. Utah is so that's 6:30, and that's we're going to be good and messed up then because daylight saving I think starts the weekend before that. We'll all be
No, it's the weekend after, Bob.
oh, okay.
It's the 10th.
Yeah. Brian, where are you right now and where will you be in 2 weeks? Can't hear you.
I'm on the other side of the planet right now, getting a 5-millisecond ping to you guys and 300 up and down in a random coffee shop.
You must be in Southeast Asia someplace.
Yeah.
I'm good with mornings. Don't worry about me.
Okay. Very good. Okay, with that, want to thank you all very much. I'm running a bit short on time, but Jed, I will send you and John that email for the cost quest. And I will also, my other immediate action item is I'll send David a full copy of the PowerPoint presentation. I'll convert that into a PDF and send it off to him. Okay.
All right, sounds good. And I'm going to send this agenda to Maria today.
Okay. We can amend it. So
That's exactly right. I mean, let's just get it on the calendar and we can amend it if we have to.
Right, exactly. Okay, very good. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. What we do
Yeah.
for fun.
Bye-bye.
Oh.
Bye.